It's time to start. Come on.
Coming.
Oh, hey, Lucy.
Hey, hey. Hey, everybody. Hey, Bradley.
Hey, Thursday night, Chi Alpha. How's it going? Here's Lucy being cute.
We're so glad to see you guys here today. Today we're going to be talking about a really cool story. It's a story
Actually, hey, I don't mean to cut you off, but before you get started on your story, can I share my story first, actually? Please?
Okay.
Please? Okay, so there's this guy who would work every day and he would walk home through the same field. And he created a little footpath, kind of like what happened at UTSA, then they covered it up, you know what I'm saying? One day he noticed that there was a grouping of wildflowers, and so he's like, I'm gonna go pick a bunch for my wife.
So sweet.
Yeah, I mean, I think I've done that for you before.
Yeah.
But as he got closer to the flowers, he accidentally kicked and ran into something that seemed like a metal lockbox. And as he went down to see what he tripped over, he noticed that it actually came open and it wasn't locked. And whenever he looked inside, he saw a bunch of jewels that he'd never seen before. So, in one glance, he understood that what he needed to do was go and get as much money as he could in order to buy this lot, right? He had been walking through it. Obviously, nobody was interested in this lot. And so it was on his way home from work, and he told his wife, he was like, hey wife, funny story, I was picking you some flowers. I totally forgot the flowers. Instead, I have this idea that we should sell everything we have, like our house, our cars, you know, all our furniture, and go buy this lot that I just walked through, the one that I walk through every day, because in it I found this lockbox with a bunch of treasure. What do you think?
Man, if you came home telling me that, I might think you're a little bit crazy.
Okay, but you have to imagine, this guy's explaining it, and he's like, look, there are jewels in here I've never even seen before. They're the biggest, they're the brightest, they're the shiniest, they're the rarest. If we sell everything, I think we might have enough to buy that lot cash, and then we can go find and see if there's even more treasure. So eventually, she gets on board. She's excited and hopeful about what could possibly happen. And once they actually bought the land, they were able to then turn the jewels into a small little fortune. So it ended up working out.
Wow. Man, that's kind of crazy because he really wasn't even looking for anything.
Yeah, I mean, imagine how many days he must have walked past this incredible fortune without even realizing it. And then to top that off, he wouldn't have found it unless he had seen the flowers.
Yeah.
It was interesting too to think like he was attracted to something else that was beautiful, and then he found something even more beautiful than that.
Yeah. A lot of people encounter God that way too.
It's almost like the treasures, the kingdom of God, and people can find it in their everyday lives.
Yeah.
What about your story? Tell me about that one.
Yeah. Okay, so I heard this crazy story about this art curator. She was always on the hunt for the next great find. And one day she heard a rumor about a piece of art that was painted by the most famous artist of the early 1900s. All of his works were burned in a fire during World War I, except for this one.
All right, I'm going to stop you. That sounds a little bit like something called National Treasure. You guys know what I'm talking about. Nicolas Cage, that blonde girl, and that other guy. You know, they're not as important. But basically, long story short, I'm guessing you're going to say that she finds this piece like, ooh, you know, just kind of like a national treasure where they go and then they find this underground church. And then it's like, oh man, we made all this money even though it was a fraction of what it was actually worth.
A little bit, yeah. So she hears this rumor, and then she goes in a few states over, figures out where in the museum where this piece of art is, and she asks how much. And she quickly realizes that this painting is worth more money than she has in her bank account. So she goes home and she looks at all of the art she's collected up to that point and realizes that if she sells every piece of art that she has so far, and her home, and everything she owns, she will have enough to buy that painting.
So that's like when Nicolas Cage goes and steals the Declaration of Independence, right? He's literally risking it for the biscuit, old Nick Cage, and then in the end it pays off, and then they forgive everything.
Yeah, pretty much.
Maybe.
Pretty much. So she gets really excited at this idea that she could actually get this painting. She sells everything super quickly, rushes back to the museum, and buys it. And then she becomes basically one of the most famous art collectors ever.
Just like, I'm just kidding. I'm not going to talk about National Treasure anymore. So That's really cool. That's almost like what I was sharing, but someone who's actually searching
Yeah.
for what they're looking for,
Yeah.
right?
And she found it.
Yeah, so it's kind of like when people, like, there are a ton of people who are actually looking for God, and as they're looking for him, they find him. Like, God literally says in the Bible, if you seek me, you will find me if you search for me with all of your heart.
Yeah.
Some of you guys maybe have noticed that this sounds oddly similar to a parable of Jesus in Matthew 13:44 through 46. And that's exactly where we got the idea from. So let's go ahead and read that together.
Matthew 13:44 to 46. Again, the kingdom of heaven is like a treasure hidden in a field, which a man found and hid. And for joy over it, he goes and sells all that he has and buys that field. Again, the kingdom of heaven is like a merchant seeking beautiful pearls, who, when he had found one pearl of great price, went and sold all that he had and bought it.
So Jesus used these parables to explain the idea that the kingdom of God is easily found, but not easily obtained. We can see that whether you're searching for treasure in a field or you're going out and searching for that painting, like we were saying, that God can be found if you're looking for him, and even if you're not. So he's hidden himself in the everyday parts of life. He's there for those who are seeking him, and he's there for those who maybe aren't.
Yeah, and it seems like the true test is what you will do when you find the kingdom of God. The people in these parables and these stories that we told, they realized the worth of the treasure they saw, and they sold everything for it.
Yeah.
Not everybody will make that choice. Jesus also encounters a rich young ruler who wants to follow him, and Jesus asks him to sell everything he has to follow him. And the rich young ruler wouldn't do it. And Jesus didn't chase after him either when he walked away.
So one of the things I noticed right off the bat is the difference between the rich young ruler and the guys in the parable that we're talking about, because the rich young ruler essentially did not think that following Jesus was worth selling everything like Jesus had asked.
Yeah.
Versus the people who saw the treasure in the field, or the people who found the pearl of great price, they considered what they found to be worth everything that they could possibly give. And so it just really puts this idea into perspective that people are willing to do the extreme for what they consider to be the most valuable thing to them.
Yeah. That's interesting, because the reality is that God is the most valuable thing in all of the universe.
Yeah.
And he is worth making any sacrifice for. So the question for us is, are we willing to joyfully sacrifice everything to obtain God's kingdom?
I hope so.
Yeah.
So the second point is that whenever God asks us to give something up, he doesn't leave us empty-handed. He's actually going to give us something in return. And so the Bible, we see that we're supposed to give up sin and we're supposed to take on righteousness.
Yeah.
And that's the beauty of what God is asking us to do, is he's asking us to live in his will for our lives, which is to be holy just as he is. And we get to do that joyfully. Being in God's kingdom means we get to be followers of his laws and his citizens. And with the citizenship of his kingdom, we get to partake in the pleasures and the limitations that he sets for us.
Yeah.
So if you want King Jesus to be your king, you have to abide by the laws, but it's a joy to get to do so.
Yeah, and the greatest thing that he could give us is himself, right? Because he's the thing that's the most valuable.
Right.
All right, so let's talk a little bit about what we learned.
Yeah, so the first point we talked about is the kingdom of God is easily found, but not easily obtained.
We also talked about the idea that God is the most valuable thing in all of the universe.
And then lastly, we talked about how there's joy in knowing that God will not leave you empty-handed when you give something up.
Yeah. We're so glad that you guys were able to hang out with us tonight, and we hope you have great discussion with your small group.
Yeah, hey, where's Lucy?
Gotta go!